Good morning. Nancy Sharp is the author of Both Sides Now, a true story of love, loss, and bold living. Nancy, thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
You gave birth to twins
I did.
and got
Girl-boy twins.
word that your husband's cancer had returned on the same day?
It was pretty unbelievable, actually. This was in 2001, May 20th, to be exact. And our twins, like as can happen when you are carrying multiples, came early, quite unexpectedly. And it was even more shocking, to be honest, that my husband's oncologist called later that same day to let us know that his MRI, which had up until this point been fine for a period of time, a long period of time, was suddenly not fine. So it was just this unbelievable collision of life and death in the very same moment.
And you were at the beginning of adult life at that time, right?
You're so kind. I was 35.
Oh, really? Wow.
So
Okay.
I was 35 years old when I gave birth to them. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So and my husband, his name was Brett, and he had been diagnosed prior to the time we had children, which really interests a lot of people because so many people say, well, that was so brave. What made you want to go ahead and decide to have children on the heels of a cancer diagnosis? He was diagnosed with a brain tumor, by the way, in 1998. So he had a pediatric brain tumor, which is sort of unusual for adults, and there were no real precedents at that time for how adults would respond to treatment. And he was doing very, very well. So well, in fact, that life had returned to a new normal for us. We were living in New York City at the time, and we were young, and we were doing well in our careers, and all of our friends were having children, and we wanted that future we always dreamed of having. And so for us, that future included having a family. And as this is what actually begins the book, Brett's uncle, who happens to be a pediatric oncologist of all strange ironies, told us when we were contemplating this decision, the only proof of cure is life. And so that really those were the words that helped us make this life-affirming decision to go forward in life. But we also, I have to say, we did want so badly to believe that he would be okay that we somehow made it our narrative that he would be okay, which is a very important distinction. No one said the words. I didn't remember that until it came time to write the book, and I felt that I really had to be accountable for the words I used on the page, not just those in my head.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
We do create life narratives.
Yes, we do. We can't live without them.
No.
Yeah. The children were healthy?
Yes, they were born very early. They were 30 weeks old when they were born at gestation, and so my daughter was 2.5 pounds. My son was 3 pounds 2 ounces, and they have had their share of preemie symptoms, but they're doing very, very well today. They're happy and they're thriving physically and socially and emotionally. And of course, I'm remarried, so that does wonders in terms of restoring a sense of stability.
I can hardly imagine you have premature children and all the emotions that go with that, and now you have a husband who's suddenly dying.
Who we hear basically 2 months after the time that the kids were born, you've got a 5% chance. So it was like, somebody asked me yesterday in the panel, well, how did you survive that? And I simply said, in stages.
So did you feel obligated to, support your husband?
Yes, and I wanted to.
Yes.
I felt that, our children were being cared for in the NIC unit, first of all, for, 6 weeks. And so I felt very conflicted, quite frankly. I also felt a little bit ill-prepared for motherhood. I had no idea. I mean, I think that's common.
There's no being prepared.
Right, there's no such thing as being prepared, maybe under the best of circumstances, but I really felt unprepared.
So this book is also about how you lived through this experience and built a new life?
It is, that's true. And so the story is that a couple years after Brett, my husband, died, when the twins were nearing their 5th birthday, and I was nearing my 40th birthday, I have to say. See, I'm really not that young, not as young as you think. I knew that I needed to do something different with my life because Brett had been sick almost 7 years. So that's a very long time to live with that kind of an illness hanging over your life. And so in between the time that he was sick, well, dealing with the highs and lows of that slippery cancer diagnosis until the time he died, and all the attendant mourning and grief that followed, it was almost a decade. That was a quarter of my life. And I began to think, if not now, when? I've got to do something different with my life for myself and for my children. So I really, it was at this time that New York City really began to wear on me. And I'd been there 18 years. So it's not as if I didn't know what I was dealing with. But quite frankly, everything was feeling too much, too intense, too much. And I just needed a change. So I had always loved Denver. And my closest friend from college lives there. And many, many times over the years, Brett and I had gone to visit she and her family and taken vacations together. And every time we were there, and just being amid those Rocky Mountains, just looking out onto them, something felt very right about the world. And that was what I needed. And so in 2006, on Father's Day, actually, it just happened. Maybe that was divine inspiration, I don't know. We picked up my 5-year-old twins. We moved from New York City to Denver and, started Act Two. And about 7 months after I got to Denver, I happened to be reading the newspaper, and they were talking about how 5280 magazine, which is a very popular city magazine in Denver, was featuring the best of singles issue, and how wasn't it wonderful that an ABC News anchor, Steve Saunders, who also happened to be widowed with 2 children, was the hot catch that year. And I was curious who he was. I'm a single mother of twins. I have absolutely no time to watch TV, but I wanted to know who this guy was with a similar story to mine. So I went and I got the magazine, and he was very attractive, quite frankly. However, there was more to it because clearly we had this similar experience. But in the spirit of bold living, I decided, I'm going to write him a note. So I sent him an email and a photo, and wouldn't you know, he's the man I married.
Wow.
It was really, it's so crazy, it almost doesn't sound real, but it is real.
Yeah.
We've been married 5.5 years, and that too is both sides now because, with our joint experiences, both of us having been widowed previously, the past is simply a part of who we are today, just not the whole part.
Did faith play a role in your ability to overcome these terrific challenges?
It did, but I don't think I saw it as such at the time. A lot of people ask me that, and I happen to be Jewish, but I would say that I didn't really get, faith came to me in so many different forms, is what I'm trying to say. So we had a very close neighbor friend who was a psychologist and a minister, and he would talk to us a lot, and we became very close friends, and he's in the book quite prominently, actually, because he's sort of he's my guide in many ways, because he's attended to situations like this before, whereas for me, this was so new. I also felt very fortunate that after my husband died, by some very serendipitous connections, I came in contact with a wonderful synagogue in New York that I had never set foot in before. And they heard the story, and they took me in and my children in, and that gave me a very strong sense of foundation. But quite frankly, I also heard faith in the song, the Joni Mitchell song, Both Sides Now, for which this book is inspired by. And in the mountains. I see that in my beautiful Rocky Mountains today.
Yes, we have to take our wisdom and our faith and our encouragement where we find it, right?
That's right.
Now, this book, it's really not out until February?
It's out officially February. Yes.
Can people get it yet?
People can get it on my website. If people go to nancysharp.net, they can get it off my website or at speaking engagements that I'm making in different parts of the country until February. But after February, hopefully you'll be able to get it everywhere.
And we should note that this is published by Books and Books Press.
Yes, it is.
Mitch Kaplan's imprint.
That's right.
Okay. Well, congratulations.
Thank you so
Nancy, on
much.
the
Thank
book.
you
Thank
for having
being
me.
with us. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Chauncey. Okay.